Ciao, everyone, and welcome back to Experience Italy with Friends. In today's episode, we're heading south to the region of Campania. While most known for its breathtaking Amalfi Coast, the region is also popular for its charming islands that lie west of the mainland in the Tyrrhenian Sea. You've likely heard of the jet-set island of Capri, but we're going to focus on the lesser-known but larger island of Ischia. We just spent a week exploring this charming, authentic island, and we can't wait to share what we learned. Let's get started.
Andiamo!
Experience Italy with Friends is a travel and lifestyle podcast where we will explore our favorite destinations and hidden gems, share key travel tips and cultural insights, and provide real-time updates about our move to this remarkable country. Join me, Tanya Razzo, an Italian travel expert and founder of Amici Vacations, and my Italian husband and producer, Davide Razzo, on a journey that is sure to inspire you and prepare you to create immersive and authentic experiences of your own in the beautiful country of Italy. Hello again, friends, or amici as we say here in Italy. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. I'm your host, Tanya, and I'm here with my husband, co-host, and producer, Davide.
Ciao, amici! Actually, we're not together, are we? This is our first remote recording because Tanya is in Colorado visiting our son and her sister. And I stayed behind, so we're recording over Zoom.
Yes, this is a new experience for us, and I just arrived yesterday, and I'm now set up with this cute little snowball microphone you sent me.
Yeah, isn't it cute, huh?
It is. So you guys, this is our first experiment, us on two different countries, recording a podcast, so stick with us.
All right.
And as I mentioned, today's episode features the beautiful island of Ischia. You know, we've been visiting the coastal area of the region of Campania since 2009, so quite a number of years. It's the epitome of Mediterranean living. Sea, sunshine, and the most beautiful towns perched on steep cliffs. We've covered the Amalfi Coast and explored the Bay of Naples, Sorrento, Pompeii, and the city of Naples. And we've made day trips to Capri, you know, all of the obvious and famous tourist destinations. But it was during our last stay in 2022, when we spent a month in Sorrento, that we first learned about the island of Ischia, the largest of the volcanic islands in the Bay of Naples. All of the locals were quick to point out that that's where they went for rest and relaxation, as it was less touristy, less crowded, and less expensive than Capri. You know, it's very laid back and relaxing. Unfortunately, we learned of it a bit too late, as it was the end of the season, and it was then that we vowed that we were going to make it back to the area to explore this island. So we finally did. I mean, it only took 2.5 years, right?
Yeah, and we're actually all set to go last October, and then life happened. so we have postponed again.
Yes, but we finally made it happen. And, you know, it was even more incredible, made even more memorable by celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary there. It reminded me of many of our travel adventures together that we've done over all of these years together. And so it's kind of special.
Yeah. And year to us on our 25th, right? So it was great. But we'll talk about it later on this episode because we want to talk a lot about that. Okay, so we usually give you an update of our lives here in Montepulciano. But since we have spent most of the time in Ischia, we're going to skip that on this episode and just go straight to the meat of this episode. So let's chat about Ischia, Tanya. Can you provide an overview of the island?
Sure. You know me, I'm very visual, so I want to make everybody understand where the island is before we talk all about it. And, you know, from a geographical point of view, the island lies slightly southwest of Naples and the island of Procida and the northwest of Capri. It's in the Tyrrhenian Sea, which I had to do some research to understand the difference when we talk about Tyrrhenian Sea and the Adriatic Sea and the Guderian Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. And a little, I guess, geography lesson for all of you is that I learned these other seas are basically part of the Mediterranean Sea. So they're like little neighborhoods. So that
Yes.
was a lesson for me. So when we speak of the Tyrrhenian Sea and other seas, know that they're still collectively the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah, you just should have asked me. I could have told you that. Come on, Tanya.
Well, Google did a better job.
Okay.
So anyway, back to our story. Ischia is southwest of Naples in the Tyrrhenian Sea, and the only way to access the island of Ischia is by ferry. Naples has the most options, and it takes about 50 minutes if you find more of a direct route to the island. But you can also depart from Sorrento, which is also about 50 minutes, as well as the Amalfi Coast, either Positano or Amalfi. Takes about 2 to 2.5 hours. And you can even take the ferry from Salerno, though it takes 3 hours. And what I have to say about those locations is that the ferries, they don't have as many options during the day. So maybe 1, maybe 2 in high season. So the easiest ferry to catch is from Naples.
Okay. Where can somebody buy tickets?
Well, you can either buy them online. I think we talked about under our FAQ episode that I love the app called Ferry Hopper, or you can wait to show up at the port and go to the ticket windows and buy tickets, which is what we did. But again, during high season, the lines get long.
Yeah.
And also they become in like short supply. They do sell out in, July and August. So in very high season, I think it's best to go online and buy them.
Yeah.
And one thing that is a challenge about the islands off of Naples is that ferries can be interrupted due to rough seas. And I did a little reading about it, and I think it's overall quite rare. And it's mainly like the smaller hydrofoils, which are faster, but they're smaller and they get mostly impacted. The really big regular ferries, I think, are less frequently, but it could happen. And so be aware that you are reliant on a ferry to get to and from the island.
Yeah.
Now, the size of the island, it's quite big. It's 18 square miles or 47 square kilometers, which again, compared to the, better known island of Capri, it's only 4 square miles or 10 kilometers, whichever metric you want to use. So it's about, 3 times the size of Capri. And the shape of the island is a bit of a rectangle. It's, it's almost square, but the longer sides are the north and south coasts and the shorter ones east and west. Mm-hmm. And the crazy thing is that all week I had it backwards in my head for some reason. Like I had to keep correcting myself as I would think I was on the east side and it was really north. And like, this is a quirk of mine. I always need to know the direction of things. Like I have a mental compass. And if I don't know where I'm at, it just throws me. So I had it finally figured out and hope you guys can visualize it in your heads with me that there is this rectangle of an island to the west of Naples with short sides being east and west.
Yep.
You got it, Davide?
Yeah, I think so.
Davide, before I talk about current day Ischia, can you provide a brief historical summary?
Of course, my favorite topic. And as usual, I'm going to paraphrase because it's easier on me. So just bear with me. Okay. So the island of Ischia has volcanic origins and it emerged from the seabed. Recent excavations have revealed that it has been inhabited since the 3rd millennium BC. And as you know, the Greeks were colonizing the rest of Europe. And they landed on Ischia with their first colony around the 8th century BC. And it named it Pitekusai, which means town of ceramics. Speaking of ceramics, production of ceramics predated the Greeks. So there were other peoples before the Greeks there. Then from 775 to 770 BC, it was an important commercial power between the Tyrrhenian and Mediterranean seas. Ischia was under the control of the Etruscans and then the Syracuse people. So then, I talked about the island had volcanic origins. So there were volcanic eruptions. And those volcanic eruptions forced evacuations in the 400s and then also a century later. But the fertile land and key positions in the sea kept people coming back. Then the Romans came The Roman period saw expansion of all settlements. After the Romans left, the island was frequently attacked by barbarians and pirates. The island was most prosperous in the 12th and 13th century, when dominated in turn by Normans, Suebi, and Angevins. I hope I said that right.
I do too, because I didn't know who they were. Like, I know the Normans, I didn't know the other two.
Suebi and Angevins. Sounds good to me. All right. Then there's a Castello fortress near Ischia, at the city of Ischia, and that was the main social and political center. And it reached its peak in the 16th and 17th centuries. In 1792, Ischia was passed to the Viceroy of Naples. Then, when Italy was unified, it ended the constant battle for foreign domination on that island. The name of the island changed with time. As we know, it started as Pitekusae from the Greeks. Then it went to Aenaria during the Roman times, with its reference to iron production. And then it went to be called Insular Major, and then again to Ischia in 1812, and then finally Ischia.
Wow. Well, thanks for telling us about the history of Ischia, Davide. Now let's shift to current day Ischia.
You're welcome. So what is Ischia known for today?
Well, I'm going to talk about the island as a whole first, and then I think it's important to break it down by each of its 6 municipalities, or comune, as they are referred to in Italian. As we quickly discovered, each has its own vibe and character.
Yeah.
So to begin with, I've mentioned this in other episodes. I often classify destinations in Italy into 2 categories. Places where you go to see the world-renowned attractions, and 2 places that are themselves the world-renowned attraction. So Ischia falls into this second category, naturally, where it is all about the sea, nature, and wellness. It is the embodiment of dolce far niente.
Hey, Tanya, did you know that that term, dolce far niente, was coined in Ischia?
No way.
Uh-huh. I knew you wouldn't know that. That's all. I'm interrupting you for that. So,
well, thank you. So what does it mean, Davide?
The sweetness of doing nothing.
Which is perfect for Ischia because it's all about relaxing and investing in your personal health.
There you go. Dolce far niente.
So let's start with Ischia's most famous tourist attraction. It's thermal spas and parks. And there's a lot to discuss because it's a big deal there. Nature's greatest gift to this volcanic island is its thermal waters and the therapeutic treatments that are derived from them. There are over 200 springs on the island. Did you know that, Davide?
Not 200, but I knew it's like the 10,000 lakes in Minnesota.
Well, going back as far as the Greek and Roman times, people would come to the island to undergo these thermal treatments. And, this ranges from sitting in natural thermal springs or man-made pools where the thermal water is pumped in. And you can also have treatments with clay that was soaked in the thermal springs for months, like 6 months. We were actually given a tour of the process, and it was really impressive. It's all pretty incredible. I've never seen anything like it. We've been to resorts that have spas and hydrotherapy and hot, cold water treatments, but this is at a whole new level. And just to imagine, they have entire parks made up of varying types and sizes of pools, waterfalls, jets, steam rooms, etc. There are at least a dozen larger parks around the island, but we went to one that blew me away called Negombo. It was a lush tropical garden on different levels, so you could climb up some stairs where you would walk from station to station for different water or steam treatments, and then you kind of head down to each new level as you found the next station. And in between, you can relax on lounge chairs in the garden, by the pool, or on the beach, in between all of this. So it was incredible. You can go there for an entire day and just relax and enjoy. They have restaurants and places to get drinks. It was incredible. When we went to resorts in Mexico, we would have spa days or afternoons. And while it was enjoyable, I always felt guilty of being indoors. Like we were in this beautiful resort in nature and we were inside instead of at the beach. And this experience in Ischia was like you're at an outdoor spa in the most beautiful surroundings. I mean, again, it was incredible. And as I mentioned, there are dozens of these parks across the island and some bigger than others, and each has its own personality. And, everyone on the island seemed to have their favorite. I'd ask all the locals, and the two main contenders were Negombo and Poseidon. On top of this, there are hundreds of hotels with their own spas and wellness centers. We stayed at 2 different hotels and each had one. They had thermal pools, but you could also get a variety of massages and mud treatments, which of course we had to try.
That was really nice.
We did a face one and a body one, and they mean serious business. We had to get cleared by a doctor first who determined how much of the body could be treated. And, people come to the island as a medical retreat seeking relief from different ailments. And they strongly believe in it, and there is a lot of science behind it. I'm not sure what to say personally about it other than it was relaxing, very enjoyable, and you feel good. But I don't think I noticed any real health improvement. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we didn't do it enough. Again, some people go and do a full week's worth of different treatments. Overall, it was a unique experience. Laying down in this huge blob of mud and having it smeared all over you. Then you wait for 20 minutes and then shower and then sit in a thermal water hot tub. And, we're all about experiences, and this was definitely one of them. I mean, what did you think, Davide?
Hey, I forgot to ask you. My hot tub, after I showered and got all the mud out, it was so hot. I had to ask her, can you put some cold water in it? I cannot bathe in this. The water was almost boiling hot. What was it for you too?
No, but I think I have a higher tolerance than you do.
Maybe, but oh God. So she started to put cold water in it, and then I said, okay, now I can go in. So, but overall, I think it was great. I mean, it was weird to lay on this, mud, and then she smeared it all over your body, and I don't know, they wrapped you in, and yeah, I think that I really liked the massage afterward. So.
Well, I'm glad we tried this, and so we could tell everybody about it. So, everybody should go to Ischia and have an experience of both a thermal park and a mud massage.
Okay, so Ischia is also known for its beaches, Tanya.
Yes, and they vary around the island. There are some public ones, there are some private beach clubs, or some that are part of a hotel and resort. In addition to that, there are different types of sand. They all have great views, but of course, different parts of the island and what you can see in the neighboring area. But what I have to say is that this is something that sets Ischia apart from its neighboring Capri and Sorrento. These places don't really have beaches. Mm-mm. Capri has a couple of small ones, but Sorrento mainly has beach clubs on piers over the water. And you have to go to the Amalfi Coast, Positano and Amalfi, but those beaches are still, fairly small. So there are so many beaches around Ischia that there is room for everyone, though I'm sure they're still packed in July and August.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the Naples people, they go there in summer to the beaches because...
Yes, and I can see why.
Yeah, so...
And of course, you have an island, you have beaches, you naturally need to get on the water. And, boating and fishing are the most obvious activities that we saw, as there were many marinas that we traveled around. And, we'd planned to go on a boat one day, but the water was too rough. And then it just didn't end up working out with our schedule. But, it was still fairly early in the season. And I can imagine that, boats are the big thing to do. And then there's also all the different typical water sports available, like snorkeling or scuba diving and paddleboarding, etc. But as I was thinking about this, the one thing I've never seen in Italy is parasailing. I'm not sure, if that's for real, but I haven't realized it and I've never seen it. So I don't know if this is just something that we do in the US or Mexico, but I haven't seen parasailing in Italy. Is it here, Davide?
Well, there is parasailing. You have to go. Actually, I bet there's some parasailing in Tuscany, on the beaches of Tuscany. But for sure, there is parasailing on the beaches of Rimini, Cattolica, all that side.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. So
I was thinking about it. I'm like, I've never noticed parasailing.
yeah. So
Not that I've done it. I don't think I want to.
no, and not my favorite thing to do.
Get up in the air. Anyway, back on the ground. Hiking is very popular in Ischia, or you can go horseback riding. There are paths for both all over the island. And, Ischia's highest peak is Mount Epomeo. The summit offers breathtaking views of the island as well as the Bay of Naples. There are 2 restaurants up at the top to help you recover after the grueling hike up. And, we didn't do any hiking. We opted for touring on the scooter and relaxing. But maybe someday we'll do hiking there. And, overall, I would say the upper landscape of the island looks similar to Arizona or Palm Springs. It seemed to have like a desert type climate, which was different than like lower below. It was a lot more, tropical and foresty. I did learn that, while it's rare, some years there is snow on the top. And they used to have a snow industry back in the 19th century where they produced ice for the island. And so I thought was an interesting tidbit. Now, the locals I read don't normally do this hike except annually on Easter Monday. And the rest of the year is limited mainly to tourists. Now, if it's raining on Easter Monday, they just wait till the following year. A little interesting something to learn about the culture is this annual hike up the mountain. Okay, well, Davide, our next topic that we always have to discuss is eating and drinking. And, you can do cooking classes and wine tours on the island of Ischia as well. But why don't you give us a quick overview of the food? Like, I remember last week we had a lot of awesome seafood, and talk about the other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the seafood is the very typical food on the island. But also, you cannot miss the coniglia all'Ischitana, which is a rabbit. It's a rabbit stew that they do typically, and they raise their the rabbits, and they specifically feed them with certain food that the meat gets tender. So we had that at our first night. It was very good. Then, of course, they are also known with the Genovese. We actually tried a seafood Genovese the one day, which I thought it was really, really good. So then, of course, pizza. I mean, Naples, that area, pizza. We didn't have one, but it's really good. So then
I was too much on the seafood. I wanted my favorite was the grilled octopus, and I had I don't know how many seafood salads as an antipasto, and I could have that every day. It's so good, and all the seafood pasta dishes too.
Yeah, I mean, I found the love back for tuna salads. I mean, the tuna salads there, they were fantastic. So anyway.
Yes, and we actually had one at the restaurant where it was a tuna pasta, which again, I was like, I miss tuna. Why don't we ever eat tuna?
I know. Anyway, so there's other specialties like pasta and beans. It's a very typical dish from there. And then there's a dessert that is very local, which is called migliaccio, which is like a sweet black pudding. And we didn't try it. They didn't offer it.
No, and I'm sorry, but it doesn't sound super appealing to me.
I don't know. But
their wine.
Yeah.
I enjoyed their wine. So that was both for the meal and dessert. I really enjoyed the Ischia wines.
Yeah, there's actually a couple of wineries on the island that they produce the local wine, which I would say it's pretty good. And I loved it. That's about it.
Well, we ate and drank well. I mean, it's simple food, but simple is good. And again, a lot of seafood. And I have to say the rabbit, I mean, we're not used to eating rabbit in the US or maybe many other parts of the world, but it's very typical here in Italy. And, Ischia is known for it. So to try it was great. And, I recommend everyone be adventurous and give it a whirl.
Exactly. Okay. So enough for the food, Tanya. You mentioned it before. Let's explore the 6 comuni and towns on the island. What can you tell about those 6 towns here on the island?
Well, again, there's the 6 kind of municipalities, right? I mean, they're kind of big areas of the island. And within each of these municipalities, there are different villages and towns. So, if you were to divide the island into six, but what I found very interesting is that they really do have their own character. And we noticed it ourselves, like before we were talking to some of the locals and asking them their opinion. And, eventually I picked up a guidebook towards the end of the week and learned, oh, yeah, they're very distinct. Like we were noticing correctly. But what I will say about overall is that the entire island is made up of colorful Mediterranean architecture. There are some Moorish influences from the Middle East and, but overall very simple and very charming. So let's go through this from a counterclockwise position, since that's how we explored it when we were there. And we'll start with the northeast corner, so the one closest to Naples. And here you'll have the comune of Ischia. So a little confusing in a sense that it's Ischia Island and its main city is Ischia. So, And within this, the town of Ischia is divided into two. There's the Ischia Ponte, the historic quarter, with the ancient castle that we mentioned. And, it has stone streets and it seems very frozen in time. And then the other side of Ischia is Ischia Porto. It's the harbor district and commercial center of the island, and it's filled with brightly lit taverns and bars. And so the, Ischia is the main port town for the entire island, but there are additional ports. Now, we first explored Ischia Ponte, the area closest to the castle, and this houses the main landmark of the island, the Castello Aragonese, as we mentioned earlier. And we had lunch right by the castle at Da Coco. And, I assumed it was going to be touristy given its location, but it was wonderful. And I have to say, it was recommended by Alfonso, who was our guest speaker on our wine episode, and he's from Naples. So he said to go there, and it was wonderful. They had awesome seafood and appetizers. So after that, we walked over to the castle and explored. And again, let me paint a visual. It's its own island, a mini mountain, really. You cross a large bridge to get to it, and it's very grand. And I felt like I was stepping back in time or like in a Game of Thrones or Outlander scene. It was so kind of, just historic, this big stone structure.
I'm sure some movies were done there.
We'll have to look it up because it would be the perfect backdrop for many films, I would imagine. And for many centuries, the castle was the center of all that happened on the island. Like, it was really where most people lived and where all the happenings occurred. The first fortification was built in 474 BC, and it began as a fortress as a way to defend the island. But then in the 14th century, they built a cathedral, and then it evolved into a castle and a new name of Castello Aragonese after Alfonso of Aragon, the King of Spain. And, it housed up to 3,000 inhabitants. Can you believe that, Davide?
Wow, I did not know that.
No, it was incredible. I mean, it was large. And, there's tons more history that I won't get into for the sake of time. But, just need to say that I enjoyed touring it. There's the cathedral, there were tunnels, gardens, the surrounding wall, great views of the island of Ischia from there, as well as the surrounding islands. And there were even a couple of cafes where you can enjoy a beverage or a snack where you can relax and enjoy the views. Again, you got to relax in Ischia. You get up there, have a drink. But what was interesting was there's a torture museum that we toured, and it had some very interesting instruments in there. I don't know.
So you have no time to dig into the history of the castle, but you want to mention the interesting instruments in the torture museum?
I do, because it was something worthwhile to go see. But we enjoyed the castle. But then back on the mainland, the Ponte neighborhood was charming and one of the most historic and authentic parts of the island. I mean, it literally is one of the older parts of the island. So naturally, it's more historic, but it still retained that, more casual, rustic vibe with cute piazzas, churches, restaurants and bars, and lots of fun shops and art galleries. And, I don't know what you think, Davide, but to me, it had a Spanish vibe to it and maybe even a bit of New Orleans, in my opinion. Like, everything stays open late, so it's a great nightlife. So I feel like it was just really a happening place to be and a great place to stay if you like small, authentic hotels or apartments and want to be amongst this historic vibe. Like, would you agree?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I thought that, I was in Mallorca, which is a Spanish island. I thought that, hey, this is Mallorca. I mean, it was so really but again, it had its Spanish influences because they were ruled by the Spanish. So
yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And it's still there. And it just felt very old world authentic. And I really enjoyed that about it. And, it doesn't have the beaches. And so if you go northwest, we'll move on to its neighboring part of the comune, which is Ischia Porto. And, again, I mentioned this is the main commercial port, and it has a large crescent-shaped marina. And we learned that the marina has an interesting story that, it was originally a volcanic crater lake from about 400 BC, and it was transformed in the island's first harbor by King Ferdinand II in 1854. And, I learned about this first from one of our taxi drivers, and then I read a little bit more about it, but it was a freshwater lake, but the surrounding area became marshy and would get smelly in the summer heat, and also became a breeder for mosquitoes and malaria. So to solve the problem, they decided to excavate the lake and open it up into the sea, creating this large harbor. And, it's beautiful and has a lighthouse from 1856. Very charming. And there also used to be a villa that was the summer residence of the King of Naples. Now, Ischia Porto is overall a bit more trendy and upscale than the Ponte section. We said that was very historic, kind of old world. This is definitely more modern. The main street is Corso Vittoria, Colonna, and it has lots of boutiques and cafes, great for upscale shopping. It's also known for having a big nightlife. You will find boutique hotels with beach access, as well as larger resorts with wellness centers, pools, and their own private beach clubs. I toured one and was blown away at just everything it had and all the great amenities. And then just down the street, you went into town and went shopping. So the beaches here are smaller, so it's known to get quite crowded. And to escape, you can actually walk up from the port to see the villages of Campaniano and Faiano, which you can walk to for great panoramic views. So overall, we liked it. It wasn't in full swing yet for the season, but I could tell this was the primary touristy part of the island. And many locals said that this is where it's at. The main scene with the nightlife, lots to offer, and, that big summer energy and buzz. And it's really both the port and Ponte together because they're side by side. And if you like action and being where everybody else is, I think this is where you would want to stay, or perhaps spend a couple of evenings there to see, what it's like. What did you find?
Yeah, was very trendy. It was very I can only imagine, like you said, in summer, it's going to be from 8 at night until 6 in the morning. There's movement on that strip. There's going to be a lot of dance clubs and restaurants and bars. And yeah, so that's
maybe
where
that's
it's
where
at.
the younger crowd hangs out.
Probably, yeah. So
We're a little too old for that, but maybe we can handle at least a night of it.
Maybe. Okay, so let's move on. We're moving west, and the next commune is Casamicciola Terme. What can you tell us about that?
So this commune has a central location on the north shore of the island, and it has its own marina, the second commercial port of the island, and a busy yacht harbor. So we actually took the ferry here to this port, and we spent the first 3 nights of our stay in this commune. It's known for being the most important thermal spa city in all of Italy. The Castiglione Thermal Park being the largest, with 10 pools and a spa center. So I wasn't aware of that, but there are so many hotels and buildings in this area that it's not surprising that they all have their own thermal parks or thermal centers. What was interesting about this area is that it suffered from a major earthquake back in 1883 and had to be largely rebuilt. And, from that experience, it became a center for earthquake monitoring and the creator of the seismic bath. So a lot of the instruments and ways that we monitor earthquakes came from Ischia.
Wow. Okay.
I know. And who would have known that? Next trivia pursuit, someone will know that information. And the area is also known for, lots of great hikes within nature. It has a lot of the ceramic workshops, we mentioned. It has these ceramic origins. And, the area along the water was super cute. Lots of shops and restaurants. But overall, the feel of the commune was smaller, more chill. Our hotel was up in the hills in what I felt like was more of a residential area. I mean, it was a cute boutique, had a nice pool, but it felt a little remote. Like I think I would have recommended staying closer to the water. So it was good to experience that. What was good about the comune is its central location, as I mentioned. It was easy to get to Ischia or the neighboring comune of Lago Ameno, which we'll talk about. And, as such, we didn't spend a lot of time here other than at our hotel, but we were able to quickly get to other areas by scooter. So, nothing against it, but maybe if you're just focused on the spas or staying at a thermal park and wanted to be in a kind of more quiet, remote place, this would be the comune for you.
Yeah.
I don't know, Davide, what did you think?
Yeah, that's how I felt. I think I liked it more, when we were going around the island with a scooter, because we could go either side and it would take us the same amount of time. So, and we did this scootering from another town that we stayed at, which you're going to talk about a little bit later. And that was a little bit more challenging. So,
yeah, no, I feel like its best thing here was its location. And again, brought a lot of great thermal parks and hotels. But next to it, if we head a bit further west to the northwest corner of the island, is the comune of Lago Ameno. And I loved this corner of the island. It's best described as cute, charming, and quaint. It has a colorful shoreline and a smaller marina. Lots of fun bars, cafes, restaurants, and shops. And its main landmark that sits in the marina is a mushroom. It's a mushroom-shaped rock formation. It has grass on the top of it. And it's appropriately called the fungo, the mushroom. I thought that was unique. The whole area, of the island, I felt like this town felt the most like Capri or Portofino. It was upscale, maybe a little bougie, but like in an understated way. So it's a little bit more traditional versus like a party vibe. Like you don't pick here if you want the loud nightlife. Some may actually think it's boring, but here there are a lot of larger, more upscale resorts nearby. There's a couple of beaches, a smaller one with white sand. It's called the Spiaggia di Barullo, and a larger sandy one, Montano, which is next to the thermal park of Negombo that I mentioned earlier. So great beaches, great resorts. And we toured the Hotel Reginella, which is right on the marina. And it's very historic and put Ischia on the map for a lot of jet setters. And the movie producer, Angelo Rizzoli, bought a villa back in the 50s and 60s. And he attracted a bunch of the jet set for film stars, actors, politicians, and other personalities like Elizabeth Taylor and others. So all of these people were coming to Ischia, and he helped put it on the map. And, I just really enjoyed Lago Ameno and feel it's a good place for a more relaxed stay versus Ischia Porto, but also has a lot of amenities to offer. And, I hadn't been to Ischia yet when I planned a honeymoon for clients here a couple of years ago. And I forget exactly what I learned in my research at the time that pushed me to recommend a resort in this corner, but I think it was the perfect choice for that occasion, and they loved it. So again, it's a very romantic corner with lots to do, but also what I like about this corner of the island is that you can get to all the other parts of the island easily. It's a 15, 20-minute drive to Ischia, 10 to 15 minutes to Forio, and 20 minutes to Sant'Angelo. So it's kind of perfectly mid-distance to get around the island.
So I thought that you described it perfectly, Tanya. But, I mentioned before, dolce far niente. I read that somewhere there in Lago Ameno, that it was coined in that corner of Ischia. But it makes sense when you're there. It's like, I could just sit there at a cafe and just enjoy the time of being there. It's so relaxing, and it was beautiful. I think it was my favorite part of the island.
It was just charming for me. Like I had the great shops, and it was considered more luxury, but it wasn't super expensive. Like I was able to get some ceramics pretty, inexpensively. I got an amazing tablecloth with lemons and local design, and it was 20 euros, and a lot of great, souvenirs I picked up. So while it seemed upscale, it still wasn't like overly expensive. So it just felt really charming to me, and I enjoyed it too. And Also, a great attraction to it is that just around the corner from the island, Lago Ameno on the northwest corner of the island, is the commune of Forio. Now, I have to say this, strange, because initially you look at this and you're like, oh, it's Forio. And we were quickly corrected and said that the emphasis is on the I, so it's Forio. Cute town on the west coast, or I should say the commune. And it's known for its fabulous sunsets, being there on the west, and also its historic center, which shows a strong Moorish influence. And you could see that as you looked around. The city has a lot of hotels. It's quite a large city, so it has a large variety of offerings. And because of that, it's popular in winter as well as summer because people can go there and still enjoy all the thermal parks and wellness centers. We went there for sunset, and one of the best viewing places is the Santa Maria del Soccorso Church. It's a small white church with a Moorish design and has become a symbol of the island as well. And it became famous with Pope John Paul II because he was there and met with a group of young people there back in 2002. The church sits high on a cliff and has a prominent view of the coast. There is a Michelin restaurant right below it that we stopped into for aperitivo and had the most lovely view from its terrace. It was really special. There is also the Tower of Torrione, which was built in 1480, and it's the only one remaining of 9 towers that were built to fortify the city in the past. So that was a huge landmark. And, we walked along the marina and hit large bordering rocks and listened to the water crash into them. And it was super enjoyable to be there at that time of day. Forio has a couple of large beaches, Chiaia, north of the center, and Chitara, south of the center, which has space even in July and August. At the end of the beach of Chitara is the Poseidon Giardini Thermal Park. And, it's almost on the southwest corner of the island. And again, many people voted that this was their favorite. We stopped by and took a quick look, but we didn't spend the day there. And it's a little bit flatter than Negombo and still had lots of different pools and right by the beach. So I think it would be super enjoyable.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning that if you compare the two, Negombo and Poseidon, we were told that the Negombo is more, I wouldn't say party-like, but people care less about being loud. And the Poseidon is more for the serious people that go there, that, they go there to relax. And so they're quiet. It's like they treat it as a spa.
Yeah, and it was a little surprising to me to hear that, actually, because thinking of Negombo with all of its tropical gardens, you would think it would be a little bit more secluded and quiet. I don't know. Maybe it always depends on who's there. I prefer the scenery of Negombo, to be honest, because again, I'm a gardener. I love all the flowers and the palm trees. And it was, I don't know, I felt like it was in like a tropical rainforest in many ways.
Okay.
But speaking of gardens, another key attraction north of the center of Forio that we visited earlier in that afternoon is called La Mortella Gardens. These were built by William Walton, the English composer, and it was beautiful. And it has an amphitheater where concerts are performed at all summer. And, what a place to view a concert with views of the city and the sea behind the stage. I would love to experience that someday. And another garden was built in 2006 called the Giardini Ravino, and it's specializing in succulents and exotic plants. So again, not surprising with the sometimes deserty climate of the island. And yet another point of interest in Forio is the Bay of Sorgetto. It is a free open-air thermal park accessible throughout the year. It's hidden in one of the most beautiful spots on the island. It's a real pearl of nature, a crescent-shaped cove embraced by vertical rocky walls, and it's only accessible by climbing down 200 steps. Here, the cold and warm water merge with fresh and salt water, giving bathers a truly unique experience. Now, we weren't able to go there, but many people told us about it. And thanks to the water temperatures, which reach 37 degrees Celsius, you can even swim there in the coldest months of the year. So as you can hear, there is lots to see in Forio, and I loved visiting there, but it seemed maybe a bit too big and not as charming as the other locations. So maybe I wouldn't want to stay in a hotel there, but I would imagine because of its size and options, it would be less expensive than other parts of the island in high season, and also maybe a good place to go in winter. I don't know. Davide, what was your vote?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was just okay. I think the best part was our aperitivo in that Michelin-rated restaurant. We just walked in and there was nobody there. And so it was just us on the terrace enjoying the sunset. And I'll take that with me. That's a unforgettable memory.
Yeah, it was pretty special. So definitely at least go there for the sunset, if nothing else. Okay, so we're continuing our circle around the island and rounding the southwest corner. We're now at the Comune Serrata Fontana, and it's famed for its production of wine and home of the seaside fishing hamlet of Sant'Angelo. Now, again, it's primarily agricultural, and this extends from the top of the Mount Epomeo down to the sea. It's the highest comune and offers lots of wonderful belvederes, especially of Capri to the southeast. Now, the town of Sant'Angelo is on the southern coast, and it is super cute. What's great about it, too, is that it's a pedestrian zone, no cars. I love that.
Yeah.
And it's very charming and picturesque, a little like Lago Ameno, but more rustic, fishing village versus glam. And it had a very Mediterranean vibe to it and, maybe a bit of Greek because it had white buildings with blue shutters. And, at times, maybe I would liken it to Cinque Terre too, that, it's cute and colorful and a marina, but because of the fishing village vibe, I think it just made it a little bit less upscale than maybe Lago Ameno, but equally as cute.
Yeah. Greek vibe is the right description. I like that. So
yeah, it was very Mediterranean. But it does have its own high-end boutique hotels and resorts, as well as the Aphrodite Apollon Thermal Park that has 10 pools and access to the Maranti Beach, and the Parco Termale Tropical Park that has 9 pools. The beach there in Sant'Angelo is a little smaller, but it's a very charming marina. It has a lot of fun piazzas, a lot of fun shops, and some fabulous restaurants. One of our better meals was lunch at Deus Neptunus, where we had that amazing pasta with tuna. And it had this amazing view of the town, and the sea was breathtaking. So I almost felt like I was on a Greek isle.
I thought that we were in Santorini.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, it's definitely worth consideration for a stay. I think to choose Sant'Angelo as a place for, staying in your hotel is that you kind of want to stay put and have a chill vacation. Do the beach, do the boating, maybe a couple of day trips, but just stay in Sant'Angelo and enjoy it. But if you're wanting to get out and explore the island, it's not as convenient as maybe some of the other comunes we talked about.
Yeah. I mean, you're dead on how you described Sant'Angelo. Greek vibe and all that. But it had its own charm, I think. And I was told there was the one pizzeria that makes the best pizzas on the island. Pizza da Pasquale, I think it was. Or was it? Or Dal Pescatore?
Yeah, I think that was it.
Okay. So we haven't tried any pizzas while we were there. That's my only little regret.
Okay. So we're up to the last of the 6 comune, Barano and Maranti Beach. This is positioned on the southern side of the island and therefore has a really great climate. It's really sought after, I would say, by beachgoers. And a key landmark attraction is the arched aqueduct called I Pilastri, built between the 1570s and 1690s. And it also has a natural park in Faiano. So 2 key landmarks of this comune. It's most known, however, for having the largest beach on the island, Maranti Beach. It has a nice boardwalk with bars and restaurants and lots of beach resorts and beach clubs.
Speaking of beaches, Maranti Beach has a part of its beach which is called Fumaiole, which is translated into the smoking beach. And, it's smoking because the sand there is so hot. And people actually cook in that sand. They wrap chicken or whatever they want to cook, and then they bury it in the sand. And an hour, 2 hours later, they could pick it up and have a meal.
We were told that, and I was like, "Are you serious?" And then we were walking by it, and we could see the steam coming out of the sand, and we're like, "Yeah, you can."
And it's just a little part of it, right? It's just like maybe, I don't know, 20 square feet.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
No,
and,
super interesting. Never would have expected that. And, we spent another 3 nights of our stay on the island here, Amarante Beach, and we really enjoyed ourselves, and I want to give a shout out to the Hotel Parco Smeraldo Resort. I don't often do this, but it was such a lovely boutique hotel right on the beach, and they were so welcoming and gracious to us. I mean, we couldn't have been treated better. And I mean, I think we'll be friends with them going forward. They just were so lovely. I mean, actually, the manager of the hotel, gave me the guidebook when we were leaving, that a lot of these great tidbits of information, they articulated very well. So loved her for that. But they have a nice pool, a great beach, a large wellness center with an indoor thermal pool, and lots of massages and treatments. I mean, this is where we had our mud treatment.
mm-hmm.
And, the hotel is very classic and old school, I have to say. I can imagine it's largely the same as it has been for the past 50 years. It's nicely maintained, but again, classic in decor and style and very old Italian charm. We ate dinner there all 3 nights, and it was great. And there were other restaurants along the beach that you can walk to. We had lunch right on the beach a couple of times, and just beautiful. And it's right next to Sant'Angelo, so you can see it just there in the distance. And it was a little challenging to walk to, but they have a water taxi that can take you back and forth to Sant'Angelo, and then over to the beach. And we did that a couple of times. But, again, it's a little bit more remote. So, but overall, similar to Sant'Angelo, you stay at this part of the island if your goal is to stay put and relax, maybe do some hiking. It's a little remote, so recommend having a car or a scooter. And even so, it's easier to go north to Ischia than it is to go west to Forio, as you have to go way up the mountain and then back down again. So, it would get a little frustrating if your goal was to do a lot of exploring. I think people mainly go there to relax. And they have guests that return year after year to just chill out and enjoy the beach and the thermal treatments. And, it was like we used to do when we went to Mexico. We would get there, sit by the pool, lay on the beach, read, get spa treatments, maybe do a couple of excursions. So I think you just have to kind of go there with that in mind, that you're not there to go out and exploring. You're there to have the dolce vita, or
Yeah.
sorry again. You're there to live the dolce far niente lifestyle.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it was funny when we Googled, because we wanted to go to Sant'Angelo by scooter, right? So we Googled the way to Sant'Angelo, and the shorter way was 35 minutes by scooter. And then around the island, just imagine that you go back to Ischia and counterclockwise, to Lacco Ameno, down to Forio, and then eventually to Sant'Angelo. It took us 38 minutes, so 3 minutes longer. But I asked because, again, I don't know the island. So I asked, which one is the better way to go to Sant'Angelo? And they told me, take the long ride, because up the mountains, the roads are not as good. They're very narrow. They're more dangerous. And we did not want to risk anything. Right, Tanya?
Right.
So, but yeah, we did it.
Yes. And then again, the water taxi was great. So going during the day, you could easily get to Sant'Angelo and have the best of both worlds. You're staying on the biggest beach at a great resort. You can go enjoy the town of Sant'Angelo, but it would just be difficult to go there in the evening and stay for dinner and then try to get back to the resort. So you just have to know ahead of time what type of vacation you're wanting.
Wow. That was it. Sei comuni. You covered them all, Tanya. Brava.
I did.
Bravissima.
Yes, it's a big island with a lot of diversity. And I so enjoyed our time there and felt like I really needed to cover all areas of the island for you. It has so much to offer, and I highly recommend going there. Maybe not for your first trip to Italy, though. And, you and I were chatting about this one day, and we said that people first come to Italy to explore the country. And then on subsequent visits, they come to enjoy the country.
Mm-hmm.
And Ischia is primarily about enjoying. But I would add, all the things we talked about, there is a lot of exploration to do too. So you can get a little bit of both thanks to its size and history. And while it's not as famous as its neighbors of Sorrento and Capri, I would say it's actually a great combination of both. It has a little bit of the city elements of Sorrento. It has some of the charm and the cuteness of Capri. But there are also areas that were more rustic and authentic too. And it had a broader array of experiences to offer. And, it's a great climate. You've got views of Vesuvius, Procida, Capri, Sorrento, the beautiful sea, great beaches, good food, nice people, the wellness focus. There's still a lot of things to do in addition to the beach and spa, but, you come here to relax. And overall, I think what's also great is that it's less expensive than other parts of the Amalfi Coast. I'm not sure if it's really less crowded yet since we were there in May. And, in high season, June through August, I can imagine it's crazy. But compared to some of the crazy touristy areas of the Amalfi Coast and Capri, I have to believe it would still be a little bit more chill.
Okay. So I'm gonna put you on the spot here because this is not on the script. What would you do now, knowing the island of Ischia compared to the Amalfi Coast? Would you stay still on the Amalfi Coast, or would you stay in Ischia doing day trips to the Amalfi Coast?
You did put me on the spot, Davide, and I'm torn because I love the Amalfi Coast and I love Sorrento and I love Capri, and I'm frequently planning trips to these locations for clients. So it's hard to choose, but I think, again, the first time you explore, and I even think along the Amalfi Coast and stuff, when people go there, it's still pretty quick. They're taking a lot in a short period of time and not a ton of time to just sit back and enjoy it. I think if I had a full week like we did and could dedicate to being on the island of Ischia, I think I would choose that now and do day trips. So again, I think your first visit, you're out exploring. Mm-hmm. And I would say explore the Sorrentine Peninsula and see what it has to offer. But when you're ready to just come and chill, I would pick Ischia. Okay. So now the next question becomes, would you do a day trip to Ischia if you're on the Amalfi Coast? I think it's a little challenging. It's not to say you can't do it, but it's a little bit further of a ferry ride. I mean, from Sorrento to Capri, it's 20, 30 minutes. To get to Ischia is closer to an hour. So on a day trip, 2 hours are already just getting there and back. Now, you could just go to the town of Ischia, and I think that would be plenty of time to just see that. But you're not going to tour the island, I don't think, and enjoy it. You would have to pick a corner and do that as a day trip, and I think it's possible.
Okay. Hey, Tanya, that was another great episode. And as usual, we conclude these always with your tips. Any tips, Tanya? Tips from Tanya.
Yes. So, we covered a lot about Ischia, so I'm going to try to keep this on the shorter side. But I guess a key question might be, when should you visit Ischia? And, as I mentioned earlier, you could go all year round because of the thermal spas that it offers and the different wellness parks. Summer season, we are realizing with some surprise, is June through August. Like May was still a little bit pre-season. And a good thing about that, though, is that it was definitely less crowded, less expensive. And, when we asked about it, we were told September and October might be better than May because the water would be warmer, and yet you still get off-season pricing. So that's a couple of tips about when to go to Ischia.
Cool.
The next one is how to get around Ischia. And we talked about having a scooter, and we chose to rent a scooter because Davide is an experienced driver of driving in Italy as well as managing a scooter. I will always say that I'm reluctant to recommend that to clients, especially if you're not familiar with driving a scooter. If this is something you want to do, try it at home first and get comfortable so that you're at least confident of the vehicle. But scooter is a good way to get around the island. You could also rent a car. It's fairly inexpensive. You can get a little car and drive around easily. But they have a great bus system, and it goes in both directions, counterclockwise and clockwise, that you can hop on and off. And you can actually drive the entire island start to finish in about an hour and a half. So buses don't take too long. So you can rely on buses. Again, I would say the Morante Beach, a little bit more challenging, but I was reading they go like during the peak season, every 15, 20 minutes up until like 10 o'clock at night. So I think buses are an easy way to get around. And of course, taxis. We took a couple of them as we were switching hotels. So easy to get around. Anything you would add to that, Davide?
No, I guess to me, renting the scooter was the best way to explore the island. But that's us. But I think the bus is the second best. The car, you can rent a car. It's a small island, small roads, and no parking. So,
yeah, actually, the parking would be the bigger concern for me.
Yeah. So,
okay. Well, my final tip, again, more related to just travel in general. And I thought of this because in our last couple of trips, I don't know how many times I was super grateful that we had a battery pack to charge our phones. And usually when we're in the car and we're charging our phones as we go, when we're without a car, I feel like we keep running into issues where we're like, oh my God, I'm down to 10% on my phone. Where's the battery charger? And if you're traveling, I mean, you're using Google Maps, you're using all of your apps, you're just draining your battery quickly. So everybody bring a battery pack to Italy. I have one on my website that I recommend. And I have to say, Davide, as he's looking at me here, is like the biggest user of my battery pack, where I'm like, get your own.
Well, get me one. You're in Denver now, so just get me one and bring it.
Okay, well, those are my tips for this episode.
Well, thank
overall,
you,
an awesome discussion of Ischia. I'm so glad we went.
Yeah, me too. Awesome island. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we did it on our 25th anniversary. And we will go back, Tanya, right? We will be there again.
We will, to enjoy and relax.
So anyway, I think that concludes our episode. Thanks again. And as usual, you can learn more about our podcast on our Facebook page group, Experience Italy with Friends. Join us there with a conversation. If you have questions, go on there and we'll have a conversation.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for listening again. I hope you enjoyed learning about Ischia and are inspired to add that to your bucket list when you are heading to that region of Italy. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Arrivederci.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao. We hope you've enjoyed Experience Italy with Friends. If you like the podcast, remember to follow us and leave a review letting us know what you found to be the most helpful. And if you want expert advice or assistance in creating your own immersive and authentic experience in Italy, visit us at www.amicivacations.com.